when they went to the Queen to tell her her subjects had no bread. Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Here, take the bomb.
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people.
Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of the Peasant's Perspective. So glad to be with you here, you guys, this morning. Yesterday was Christmas. Did you guys have a good Christmas?
Did we have a good one?
Yeah.
We had a Christmas.
Checked one off the list. Had a good Christmas. I had my future son-in-law. He joined us for Christmas this year. That was really interesting. And yeah, it's a good Christmas. Kids had all their dreams come true. It was great.
Yeah, I think we had a good Christmas, but you know, every Christmas is does it live up to the expectations? Maybe.
Maybe. You know, you're waiting for a guy in a red suit to come down the chimney.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, temper your expectations. The funny thing in our household, it seems like there's always one kid that makes off better than the others. Like he gets everything on his list and gets a couple big things. We have one kid this year that got a guitar, a skateboard, a miniature fridge. He kind of got like every big, and his, you know, Converse Chuck Taylor tennis shoes. He got everything he wanted. So, but everybody else did pretty well. It was a lot of fun. I had a good time doing the broadcast yesterday. That was great. A couple people reached out to me and said they really appreciated having a show yesterday. So that was fun. Pony Boy, good morning. Let them eat cake. Yes, absolutely. Peasant's Perspective. Good morning, Ron. G Parade Pager. Good morning. Shantini. Good morning. John Attack. It's good and still warm in Boise morning. That's awesome. So yesterday, Donald Trump put out this Christmas message, and I found it pretty funny. Merry Christmas to all, including the many sleazebags who loved Jeffrey Epstein, gave him bundles of money, went to his island, attended his parties, and thought he was the greatest guy on earth, only to drop him like a dog when things got too hot, falsely claimed they had nothing to do with him, didn't know him, said he was a disgusting person, and then blame, of course, President Donald J. Trump, who was actually the only one who did stop Epstein long before it became fashionable to do so. Was that one sentence? That was a very long sentence. When their names get brought out in the ongoing radical left witch hunt, plus one lowlife Republican Massey, and it is revealed that they are all Democrats, there will be a lot of explaining to do, much like there was when it was made public that the Russia hoax was a fictitious story, a total scam, and nothing to do with Trump. The failing New York Times, among many others, was forced to apologize for their bad and faulty election reporting, even to the point of losing many subscribers due to their highly inaccurate fake coverage. Now the same losers are at it again, only this time, so many of their friends, mostly innocent, will be badly hurt and reputationally tarnished. But sadly, that's the way it is in this world of corrupt Democrat politicians. And this is the part I think is interesting. Enjoy what may be your last Merry Christmas, President Donald J. Trump. What's he foreshadowing?
Foreboding.
What's he foreshadowing, huh?
I don't know.
4D. It's
but
4D.
Notice there weren't too many capitalized words in that one.
Yeah, we got hot, Trump,
fake.
Oh, that's pretty good. Anyways, so it sounds to me like, you know, this whole Epstein thing, it's just Catherine Austin Fitts said that the bankers of the world are going to try to use Epstein to get Trump out by Christmas. Now, Christmas is past. We've made it one day past her expectation, but clearly there's some strong agenda to try to get Trump pushed out of office. And Epstein, I hope it feels like the last grasp at being able to do that, because it fires up Trump's base. It's Trump's base that was calling for the Epstein tapes to be released. It's Trump's base that wanted people indicted. It's Trump's base that got deep into the QAnon stuff. And so by constantly smearing Trump now with, well, now Trump, you're trying to cover it up. And that's been the whole thing with Q all along. Those who try to cover it up are as guilty as the people who did it. And this was back when, you know, it wasn't being painted on Trump. This was the Democrats. And what did they do during 4 years of Joe Biden? Did absolutely nothing. What did they do during Donald Trump? Absolutely nothing, except cover it up and say Epstein killed himself, right? The whole thing. So Mario Nawfal has this breakdown. DOJ's Epstein timeline. We have everything, in quotes. Exhaustive review done, in quotes. Oh, wait, found 1 million more. So as we know, the SDNY decided, oh, hey, we have more than 1 million documents that we didn't turn over before when we were told to turn them over.
Oopsies.
Yeah, oopsies. We played the clip yesterday of the former FBI head in Southern District of New York getting walked out to bagpipes and clapping and this whole procession. It's like, wow. Okay, March 2025. AG Pam Bondi tells Fox News the FBI delivered a truckload of evidence to her office. Implies this is comprehensive. July 2025, FBI DOJ memo says they completed an exhaustive review and determined no additional evidence should be released. Case closed. December 19th, 2025, legal deadline under Epstein File Transparency Act. DOJ releases 30,000 heavily redacted pages. December 23rd, senators threaten contempt, call for inspector general audit. Schumer introduces resolution to sue DOJ for noncompliance. December 24th, Christmas Eve, news dump. DOJ suddenly announces they've uncovered 1 million more documents potentially related to the Epstein case. Read that timeline again. They didn't uncover anything. You don't go from an exhaustive review complete in July to whoops, found 1 million files in December unless you were lying one of those items. Representative Massey. He wrote the transparency law isn't playing. DOJ did break the law by making illegal redactions and by missing the deadline. Schumer more direct. Trump is engaged in a massive cover-up. White House response. President Trump has assembled the greatest cabinet in American history. That's not a defense. That's a subject change. Here's what actually happened. DOJ sat on evidence for months, slow-rolled releases, protected powerful names with redactions, then only admitted to the full scope when facing legal consequences. The files they have released include interview transcripts showing Trump flew on Epstein's plane more than previously disclosed. Now, something we did find out for people that are deep diving, Trump flew on Epstein's plane before Epstein owned it. So it was when he was controlling it. And Epstein controlled like 5 or 6 planes that were part of his little private fleet that would fly elite people around. I have a friend who used to do this. His name was Jim Piccolo. He had a private plane, Piccolo Air. And he used to fly, he lived down in Scottsdale, Arizona, and his neighborhood was full of names like, what's the guy from Motley Crue? Alice Cooper and Jenna Jameson. And I think Kid Rock had a place down there. Like he's in one of these neighborhoods with a bunch of celebrities and wealthy people. Guys that need to fly around a lot. Yes. So one time I picked Jim Piccolo up from the Boeing International Airport in his private jet, and he pulled out a bag and he's like, that bag belongs to Chris Rock. Put it back in here. You know, it was like Chris forgot his luggage. So again, wealthy people flying on some other wealthy person's plane, not always the biggest deal. And all the flights that Trump took were between New York and Palm Springs. So basically he's commuting, right? Catching a flight. So that's just a detail that does matter. It flew on Epstein's plane more than previously disclosed, and emails between Ghislaine Maxwell and clearly Prince Andrew, asking, have you found me some new inappropriate friends? Those made it through. Imagine what the million they're still hiding. A few more weeks means never. It means run the clock until attention shifts. It means bury it under under volume so nobody can process what's actually there. An exhaustive review doesn't mean miss 1 million documents. That's not oversights. That's obstruction documented real time with dated memos proving they lied. So the question is going to ultimately come down to, did Trump lie and AG Pam Bondi lie and Bongino lie and Kash Patel lie, or did someone over at the SDNY lie? Oh, yeah, we gave you everything except for what's in that filing cabinet. So everything about the Epstein saga is just, it's gross, first of all. There's a lot of stuff going on there that probably has greater impact on us as a nation than what, some allege it was just massages, right? I don't necessarily believe that. I think it gets a lot more nefarious, and I think it does tie into kind of a bigger universe of blackmail. But what was the means? What was the ends? What were they trying to accomplish with this blackmail? And I think the answer is money laundering and gun sales. Probably some drugs too. I've never connected Epstein a ton with drugs, but if he was involved with Iran-Contra, which we know he was, then he probably was involved in some drug smuggling or sales, or maybe that's where the money laundering came in. Right? It's probably just personal use, small scale. I'm sure. Catering to client specific needs. Again, go back to that book, Transformation of America, and they talk about that. The girls are having what the client's having. Right. All right. So another thing that happened yesterday on Christmas Day, there's been for a long time, there's been conflict in Nigeria with the Christians being persecuted by some Islamic group that's hanging out in Nigeria. And the Nigerian government for a long time denied any of this persecution was happening. Well, they stopped denying it when Trump basically said, listen, if you don't work with us to protect the Christians, we're going to declare you, a terrorist nation, blah, 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 blah. So they jumped on it and they've been helping out. Well, yesterday, Donald Trump ordered massive retaliatory strikes in Nigeria against an Islamic stronghold. And it turns out they had the support of the Nigerian government to do it. So let's hear from Fox and Friends this morning. Oh, let me change the audio here. I got a new microphone too. Did you guys see this?
I just noticed that myself.
That's why I was like, I'm hot. It's too bright. It's too much noise. Hopefully it's better. I used it yesterday in my office and it was kind of fun. I listened back to a part of the episode and it sounded really good. So
it is sounding good. I just noticed it like a minute ago and I've just been sitting here listening to it for the quality aspect.
I think it's good. All right, here we go. We should have the sound now. All right. Peter Ducey on Fox and Friends.
It's key. But I remember a month ago, that very government denied that there was even a problem in their country. So what changed?
Yes, the coordination with the Nigerian government is key because it's not like the United States is trying to start a war with Nigeria, but United States intelligence agencies identified that this is where the ISIS planners and this is where the ISIS attackers are congregating in Nigeria, a safe haven. And so they went and they took them out. In terms of past statements by the Nigerian president, part of that is obviously political, but it is a tough decision for a president of any country in the world to get a call from the United States, somebody at the Pentagon, who says, hey, you have a bunch of terrorists congregating somewhere in your country. We're going to come and kill them unless you tell us not to.
Yeah, and Peter, so I was looking just now at...
We're going to come kill them unless you tell us not to.
You want to tell us not to?
Is this what's happening down in Mexico? Hey, all these drug cartels, we're going to kill them unless you tell us not to. If I say don't, you'll think I'm covering for them.
The United Nations social media accounts, I see nothing about this. Ambassador Mike Waltz has spoken out about it, but nothing from the United Nations. Where were other leaders, not just here at home, the previous administration under President Biden, worldwide, saying that, 18,000 burned Christian churches, 50,000 Christians persecuted in Nigeria since 2009. Where was the leadership before President Trump?
That's a great question, Griff. And it might speak to the struggle that the United Nations has had over the last couple of years at ending conflicts. And that's something that we hear President Trump and his team allude to when they talk about all of these world conflicts that Donald Trump has had a hand in ending since he came back into office. He's been back for less than a year. The United Nations didn't go anywhere. They've been around, and wars have started, wars have continued. And so that's a real problem that the UN has right now.
Yeah, let me share this really quickly, Peter. This is Ambassador Waltz. He said, Merry Christmas to the Christians in Nigeria and around the world who know tonight that the President of the United States will fight for them.
This is the first time in my lifetime that I've seen any type of military action as direct intervention against persecution of Christians.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the paradigm shift that we, the peasants, have to have is we are at the point where we're defending our societal convictions, things like a moral compass, things like dedication to truth, things like Christianity as a whole. Right. It doesn't matter what sect of Christianity you are. We have to defend this.
I think you're right, but I think that actually that most Americans are unaware that this is even a fight that is happening.
Well, it's because we haven't had it. We've been at war with Christianity in our own country, right? Taking prayer out of schools, Bibles out of schools, rip those 10 commandments out. Look at what happens when Oklahoma decides they're going to put the 10 commandments back up in schools. Lawsuit, 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 lawsuit. Meanwhile, prayer rugs, five calls a day to prayer, more holidays for Islam, all that's going on.
I think that since DEI stuff is going away, I hope that all that other stuff goes with it.
The thing here is the pendulum has to swing. It's how far are we going to swing, right? Because clearly we could swing and go full on final solution Hitler style, right? Or we can just go, hey, we need to get back to normalcy. As peasants, it's the golden rule. I don't want to do to other people what gets done to me. We're going to hear a quote later today about Scott Jennings, how he just repeats the things that people on CNN say back to him. And then they're like, that's ridiculous. It's like, take out black, add white, and you can see the racism. You know what I'm saying? But your bias doesn't let you see it. And that's kind of how I operate. And this is why early on I was a liberal, because when I was getting out of college, Republicans were torturing people in Guantanamo Bay. I was like, I don't think I want to do that, so I'm not going to support anybody who's supporting that. Okay? You always want to turn it around on you. If this policy got applied specifically to me, how would I feel? Okay. If it's applied to someone else, am I exercising dominion or power? If you're taking someone's property rights, that feels like an attack. So I don't want to impose on other people's property rights, but I require an absolute line in the ground. This is my property. Do not trespass. Do not proceed. Do not stamp on my rights and stuff like that. Christianity, and I was explaining this to my future son-in-law last night, the role religion plays, right? It's the cathedral. It's what allows ideas to span space and time. How can you and I form a contract, right, for something that is going to last longer than our lifetime unless we believe people in the future are going to honor private property and contracts? How do you and I make investments that, how do we build an orchard that you and I will never eat the fruit of? We have to have ideas that value that fruit, right, over space and time. Religion
morals.
Is the cathedral. That's how you take a little child and you raise them up to understand what sharing means and what private property means and what speech means and all these different things. So religion is extremely important. And if we move away from that, right, and we don't support that, what starts to happen is in a generation, people don't have the value. Why do we have free speech? Well, we have free speech because sometimes when you stand on truth, power will persecute you, a la Christ. Do you see what I'm saying? And the other thing too is, what is the ideal man? None of us are the ideal man. So we have a archetype of an ideal man that we can all strive for and look towards. That idea spans space and time. And so it's incredibly important. It's incredibly important, like in places like Nigeria, that we do go defend Christians. I'm not saying boots on the ground war, but clearly a couple missile strikes could take care of a lot of the problem. That's the difference between Donald Trump and everyone else. 80 military intervention meant backing it up. Trump's okay to just come in, strike, kill the terrorist camp, and then just see how things shake out. Just back off. So Nigeria put out a press release, essentially, and I've got it up here on the screen, basically saying Nigeria reiterates that all counterterrorism efforts are guided by the primacy of protecting civilian lives, safeguarding national unity, and upholding the rights and dignity of citizens. Irrespective of faith or ethnicity, terrorist violence in any form, whether directed at Christians, Muslims, or other communities, remains an affront to Nigeria's values and an international peace and security. So what's important here is Nigeria is recognizing that that Muslim group, right? Those people happen to be Muslim, but what they're doing is terrorism. What they're doing is they're using violence, rape, genocide as a means to destroy a population.
And I'll say that this is the first time I've seen it in writing where somebody has admitted to that.
Now, Niger is all sorts of mad today. So they've said, we're not accepting any more visas from America. Great.
Okay.
Wasn't on my top 10 list to visit. Wasn't even on my list of top 1,000 places to visit, right?
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about Niger saying we're going to deny visas to people from the United States again, back when Elon Musk made it so in X you could see where someone's origin was, where their account origin was, Alex Soros, do you know where his account origin was?
No.
Niger.
Wow.
I don't know. So, he's probably got passports from everywhere. But I thought that was kind of interesting why Niger would get all mad, and just the fact that there was some sort of connection between Alex Soros and Niger. Bill Benny, he used to be, he wasn't the director of the NSA. He was a technical director at the NSA. So he was, some big foopaw up at the NSA. And he's one of these guys that was around since its creation. In many ways, Bill Benny kind of plays the part in, what's it called? Person of Interest, the Jim Caviezel show. He's the nerd guy that invented the system. Bill Benny's kind of in that vein. Bill Benny, a long time ago, started blowing the whistle on what NASA was doing. This is from 2013. So this is not new. And you can imagine since 2013, the advancement in technology and NSA's ability to gather data now combined with AI, exactly how advanced these guys are. But Bill Binney explains why it is that our government officials never seem to be accountable to the people, but seem to be accountable to some type of a hidden hand.
Had a first investigation of this under the Church Committee in the 1970s. And it just came out recently, of course, that one of the main targets of NSA was Senator Church. So also his committee. So that the idea was that they do this with the entire Senate and the House, also judges and even members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Supreme Court. So they're all being monitored. No one is exempt. So that gives them leverage against them. And when they do certain things, I keep thinking they've got something on them, and they're told what to do. So and that's why they can get through all of this, because there's so many people who are involved in this crime that they have to cover up for each other. If one falls, they all start to fall. For example, this is why Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker of the House, said impeaching George Bush was off the table. That's because she was one of the first members of Congress briefed on it. She was co-opted in early. They co-opted the 4 members of the intelligence committees, right? And she was the minority rep on the House Intelligence Committee. So when she agreed to those programs in early October 2001, then she was culpable. So if she allowed Bush to get impeached, he'd say, you have to include yourself. So, that's the leverage now they have against them. So, and the same is true for all those who are in those positions right now. They're all co-opted in, so they have to defend one another. The state
So NSA clearly grew in power, right? Starts out spying on the Church Committee, Supreme Court judges, justices, and pretty soon 9/11 happens, and the world finds out that NSA is spying on everyone. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, time to impeach George Bush because this is a clear violation of Fourth Amendment, a lot of our constitutional rights. But Nancy Pelosi's like, oh, no, we're not doing that. Why? What he just said, because she's complicit. How many things happened today? My judge was on the FISA court. He was the chief judge of the FISA court during 9/11 and after 9/11. What are the chances my judge was read on this? What are the chances my judge is on this NSA list of people that they highly monitor? Because, his decisions in D.C. have policy impact. That's right there, right out of the horse's mouth. This has been going on for a long time.
Chances are high.
Chances are high. Now, how this plays out, this was back in April. I think April 9th is when Donald Trump signed this, but this is Chris Krebs. So the NSA, right, National Security Administration, it's all technical. They're tracking every single device that's out there. There's a file folder out there just hoovering up all the data constantly. Chris Krebs, the Cyber Infrastructure Security Administration, is the agency that's in charge of all the different hubs, all the different AT&T routers, the Cisco routers. They're in charge of the firewalls. So they're like a operational partner of NSA. Does that make sense? Like NSA is gathering the data. CISA is interpreting the data for national security threats and things like that. Donald Trump signed an executive order specifically against Chris Krebs, who's part of this surveillance network that was designed to keep us safe, except it missed something really, really big in 2020.
Christopher Krebs, the former head of CISA. This is a man who weaponized his position against free speech in the election context, in the context of COVID-19. Presidential memorandum to the one you just signed, assurances he might have, and further instructs your Department of Justice, other aspects of your government, to investigate some of the malign acts that he participated in while he was still head of CISA.
This is another one. I don't know that I met him. I'm sure I met him, but I didn't know him. And he came out right after the election, which was a rigged election, badly rigged election. We did phenomenally in that election. Look what happened to our country because of it. Open borders, millions of people coming into our country. Russia and Ukraine, that would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened. Afghanistan, the way that they withdrew with 13 dead, but so many killed, actually. I mean, so many killed outside of the 13 soldiers, hundreds of people killed. And maybe, I don't know, never mentioned, but I mentioned it, 42 or 43 people so badly injured, the legs, the arms blown off, the face. And it was all because of an incompetent group of people that preceded us. And that would have never happened. And this guy Krebs was saying, oh, the election was great. It was great. Well, it's been proven that it was not only not great. When you look at all these lawyers and law firms that are signing, giving us hundreds of millions of dollars, it was proven by so many different ways in so many different forms, from the legislatures not approving to the that worked, from all of the different scamming operations. It was a very corrupt election. They used COVID to cheat. And we're going to find out about this guy, too, because this guy's a wise guy.
So in the context of Bill Binney saying that NSA's got a file on judges, politicians, basically everybody, like you're all being surveilled and that surveillance can be used against you. So Chris Krebs being at some point, a center, like a key person in one of these roles that is monitoring and controlling information. 2020 election happens. The fraud is pretty blatant. Like, you don't have to be a dummy to go, I don't see charts that go like this. You don't have to be an idiot to be on social media and see people being like, all the ballots that came over from overseas from the military went 100% for Biden.
Whoa,
right?
That's crazy.
Stuff like, oh, that's crazy. There's 40,000 affidavits. Judges are like, latches. What's done is done, right? So you get kind of that stuff going on, and you know that Bill Binney's like, hey, these people are blackmailed because of the communications that, everything. It's not just Epstein style blackmail. It's, hey, that vote you did for that water meter company that you invested in, you know what I mean? Like, that sure looks shady. I mean,
I even got the impression, this was me. I got the impression that some of these people were like signaling that they were doing this, surreptitious stuff, and that they were ballot stuffing, and that they were trying to almost get caught.
Yeah. But it was like, you can't bust any one of them because under the bright lights in an interrogation, they're going to be like, well, pointing the finger at somebody. So nobody ends up getting caught.
Right.
That's how it feels. So let's continue listening to Trump here.
All right.
This is the most secure election in the history of our country. Now, this was a disaster. And frankly, we should go to paper ballots, same-day voting, voter ID, and one other thing, a vote. You should get a little certificate that says you're a citizen of our country. Get a citizen piece of paper that says you're a citizen before you can vote. But you want voter ID and you want paper ballots, and you really want same-day voting. If you don't have same-day voting, they decide to change the air conditioner. Oh, we're fixing the air conditioner. Let's move all these boxes. We'll bring them back in a few days, and then they don't bring back those boxes. We got to have safe elections. We have to have borders. Ideally, we have to have a free press, which we don't have. We don't have a free press. We have a very dishonest press. This is an honor. We're going to find out whether or not he was right. This was a disgraceful election, and this guy sat back saying, well, I'm a member, or like he's a Republican or something, and almost right from the beginning. And he's tried to make the case that this election was a safe election. I think he said, this is the safest election we've ever had. And yet, every day you read in the papers about more and more fraud that's discovered. He's the fraud. He's a disgrace. So we'll find out whether or not it was a safe election. And if it wasn't, he's got a big price to pay. And he's a bad guy. There's another one. I have no idea who he is. Krebs. No idea who he is. I'm sure he was in the room at some point, just like you're all in the room, but I have no idea who he was. So thank you very much. Those last two are very important, I think.
So got rid of his security clearance and then directed the FBI to specifically investigate any activity he was involved in dealing with the election. That was in April.
Oof.
So it's been, 8 months?
Mm-hmm.
Trump this weekend posted a lot of election stuff, a lot of these videos resurfacing from 2021 where people were testifying about ballots and stuff like that. Information's coming out. This is Bobby Charles. He's running for governor in Maine, and he's talking about how Maine has set itself up to basically go down a constitutional toilet bowl because that it's a completely rigged system up there. Everything is Democrat except for Murkowski, right? Or is it Collins? No, Collins. Yeah, Collins is from Maine. Collins is the only thing Republican in Maine, right? Our wino representative from Maine. So he's talking about how the whole thing's just top to bottom, a complete, Democrat strong.
Right now, the state of Maine is absolutely tumbling into a constitutional violation. We have a Supreme Judicial Court with 7 justices on it. They are all liberals. They have all been appointed by Democrats. We have all our constitutional officers are Democrats. Our governor's a Democrat. Legislature, House and Senate are controlled by the Democrats. The laws in this state have no check. In the 4 years when I'm governor, all 7 of these leftist judges will come up for appointment. I will replace them all with original reform.
Bobby Charles, period, because he knows what time it is. He knows the situation they're in. It's a completely captive state. Same thing with the state of Washington, right? It's just a completely captive state. They can change the rules to favor themselves. And that's on the surface up and up side of things, let alone what might be going on behind the scenes. Now, remember how I mentioned how religion acts as a cathedral for society. It's what puts ideas out that span space and time. When the United States of America, through Thomas Jefferson, inspired, in my belief, created the concept of separation of church and state, the idea would be that the church would be the people's ideas. Right? People would attend the congregations they wanted to attend. People would go and get the value they wanted. It would not be forced on them by a king or a governor or any other type of religious zealot or tyrant. So it opened up the marketplace of ideas when it came to the cathedral. That is one of the things that makes it so that we, the people, self-govern. Right? When we teach ourselves our own moral values and we put that generation to generation, that's us doing it. On the other hand, Thomas Jefferson was also very well aware, because one of the other things he did was he established, was it University of Virginia or Virginia Tech? It's just around the corner from his place in Monticello, right? And that was one of the first schools to embrace this separation of church and state. And so what Thomas Jefferson understood was that the United States, the government, needs to have its own cathedral. And they did that through the educational system. You go listen to Mike Benz, he talks about how Harvard, or Catherine Austin Fitts talks about this as well, how Harvard competes with the Vatican. Tax-free, its own little, enclosure, its own little culture and society. And they're able to put ideas out into the world through its education, right, that can now span space and time. And this is where we get liberalism, progressive ideas and things like that. The traditional churches typically have more of a conservative thing. They don't change as rapidly because you're dealing with the soul, and nobody wants to make any mistakes when it comes to your salvation. Okay. On the education side, it can look a little bit different. They can get a little bit more progressive. They don't necessarily connect to divinity as much. Over time, Harvard was a religious institution when it started. Clearly, it's not anymore, right?
Well, they don't start from the same moral framework, so they don't have the same boundaries to start with.
I started watching a documentary on Prime about Germany and the Eastern Soviet states after World War II during Russian occupation. And it was the socialists and the Democrats that formed coalitions with the communists to win/rig those first elections in order to become completely communists, taken over states. It was interesting because the Russian soldiers going into the Eastern Europe were blown away at cars and they had watches. They were like looting and taking stuff back to Russia, because Russia had been 50 years, right at the 30, 40 years right at this point under Soviet rule, where nobody could own anything.
Well, it was probably like taking home high-tech stuff that nobody even knew existed.
Yeah, that's exactly. When I lived in Japan as a little kid, they had way better tech than we did here in the U.S. when I moved back. So John Solomon talks about how the Cubans, right, which are one of the last strongholds for legit communism, right? And how they have infiltrated the very underbelly of our society, the educational system. Now, for someone like me, who's been a homeschool parent for a long time, I could, depending on where you're at, homeschool robs the bright light of little kids. They go to kindergarten, and, if you ask a kid on the first day of kindergarten, who's the fastest in the class, they'll say, I am. And by the last day of class, they're like, not me.
Right.
It breaks their confidence because they start comparing themselves with grading and things like that. So that's a really surface level reason why maybe an early education. You don't want to send your kid to the public school because you want
Well,
to keep that spirit alive.
they get the creativity programmed out of them too.
Yes, color within the lines, right? So that's one level. But then on a bigger level, it's like, well, this indoctrination, like this belongs to the family. This belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to government. Well, socialists, communists have long since recognized, going back to Lenin and Hegel and Karl Marx, they knew that to compete with conservatism, the church, they needed to create their own similar cathedral with its own priestly class, which is why, college professors have robes and stuff like that. The whole thing, right? It's a mirror. So this is John Solomon talking about just this, how a high-level intelligence officer from Cuba admitted to him exactly how they've infiltrated the United States. And this has been going on for a long time.
I had an opportunity to interview a Cuban intelligence agent. He had retired, defected, and he went all the way back to Castro. It was Castro and the Soviets early in his career. By the end of his time, he was with the Venezuelans, Iranians, and the Chinese. Cuba always looking to destabilize us. And he said, listen, I'm going to just be honest with you. We're targeting your education system, and I'm going to give you our 5 principles of warfare. It's easier to change a young mind than an older mind. It's easier to create instability when you create division in America. It's easier to create confusion when you normalize the abnormal. And if you portray law and order as fascism, you can tear down a democratic Western society. Now, take those principles I just gave you and think about what teachers' unions and school districts brought into your schools in the last decade. Normalize the abnormal. Let's have a man go into a women's bathroom pretending he's a female athlete and let him win all the awards on the podium. DEI and CRT were designed to create division, to divide America between 2 classes of people, the oppressed and the oppressors. The oppressors are white people. Everyone else falls into the oppressed class. If you divide a country along those lines and you train children that that's the story, now you can start to create the protest movement that starts to bring down the country. The other thing he said is that in Marxism, crisis is the key. You have to keep creating another crisis to create the sense that your country is falling apart. Now think about the inscription on some of the bullets that were recently recovered in some of these assassination attempts. Catch this, fascist. Fascism is anyone who believes in law and order, who believes in the Judeo-Christian society. Those concepts have been brought into your school districts. They've been brought into your kids' classrooms. They've been brought into your child's Discord chats when they're playing video games. This guy mentioned how much he spent in the final days of his career on Discord trying to poison the young minds of children here. There isn't an accident to what's going on in our schools. Yeah, there's teachers' unions and there are nonprofits that are there, but our foreign enemies have a plan and they see the education system as the first step in destabilizing America.
What do you know about the social media network Blue Sky?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, so Blue Sky was made when Elon Musk purchased X and said he's going to allow free speech. Blue Sky popped up. So it was an outlet for people that hate free speech and are super progressive and left and communist to go and have their own platform.
Okay.
There's basically no Republicans over there. It's kind of like Gab is for conservatives. There's no Democrats on Gab.
I don't know anything about that one either.
Well, Blue Sky is a train wreck. Like you and I would go on there and just be like, what am I looking at? In Australia, they just passed this anti-social media bill for kids under the age of 12. But the only social media company that wasn't banned for kids under 12, Blue Sky. I said 12, it's 16.
Okay.
So the schools, right, push out indoctrination. Well, now they've got another outlet. They can push it out through social media. And we do see this, right? My kids, homeschooled, it's crazy to me when I'm like, my son, who's never been to public school, says things like, mom's a racist. Where do you get this idea? Well, she mentions, that Asian, she called that lady that Asian lady. And I'm like,
that's a descriptive word.
Description. That white guy, the black guy, like it's not a big deal, right?
Right.
And he's like, well, that makes her racist. Where did you get this idea?
No, it means that she knows how to use adjectives.
Yeah, you didn't get that idea from our kitchen table, right? So where did he get it? He probably got it off social media. This is a gentleman who's an advocate against trans rights, right, for family rights or traditional values up in Canada. So the peasant's perspective here. Okay, great. Kids go to school, they get a little indoctrination, they get out, they pay some taxes, and then they'll vote straight, right? They'll figure it out. That conservatives have just relied on that forever. When you're young, you're liberal, you're progressive, you want things to change. And then you realize why they are the way they are, and you don't need them to change anymore, right? Everybody wants to get rid of private property so you can have a free house until you figure out how to buy your own house, and then you don't want to get rid of private property. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, when the education system is entrenched in making the abnormal normal, when it starts to hit the ground, when the rubber hits the road, you can't always rely on those traditional mechanisms of people going from liberal to conservative as they age, because the indoctrination continues and it starts to be enforced by law.
If your kids are watching, maybe pause this for a moment. This man raped a 3-month-old who required reconstructive surgery, and he drowned a 3-year-old. And he was still a teenager when this happened. But he
feels like a life sentence, death penalty, pretty significant, right? Pretty significant. Like I would call that abnormal behavior.
He was put in prison. Then while in prison, the British Columbia government paid for him to get breast implants. And because he's now identifying as a woman, they transferred him into the Fraser Valley Penitentiary for women. And in our female prisons in Canada, there are units with moms with their small children. Up to a certain age, they can have their kids with them. So they have this separate unit. This man was placed right next door to that unit. And while he's been there, he has, of course, assaulted a woman.
Is he still there?
Yeah. So I went to Victoria, the capital, to meet with the Minister of Education about this. He wouldn't meet with me. I just say, I'm going to go. We'll see what happens. I went to meet him. He wouldn't meet. I actually walked into his campaign headquarters. I stumbled upon it. There were all these new Democratic Party members. It's called the NDP. They're far left party, and they are our ruling party in BC. And I talked to this woman at the desk. Her name's Grace Lohr. I didn't know who she was. I just walked in and started telling her all about this child abuse, of child transition, all about puberty blockers, everything. And for about 10 minutes, everyone in this building fell quiet, and they listened to me basically give this 10-minute speech to this woman listening to me at the desk. I told her all about the child abuse, and then I got to this women in prison story, and I told her about this man. His name's Adam Labukin. I told her exactly what I just told you. And when I was telling that story, another politician shut me down. She said I was making them feel unsafe.
Where does this idea come from? It comes from the universities, right? Clearly has to come from the universities. People that are in their ivory tower that are unaffected by this, that don't have to spend time in prison with transgenders. I did. We had a transgender, a couple of them in the prison I was at, right? Wasn't very cool walking around with boobs in a men's prison.
Did you feel safe?
Oh, I felt fine, but I know that person was turning tricks. You know what I mean?
And I was telling this story as calm as can be, like I always do. That made them feel unsafe. 3 times I was told that, and they kicked me out.
This is your elected official.
Yes. I came back the next morning to try to meet with the Minister of Education again. They locked me out. I have subsequently told this story online in great detail. Grace Lohr, that woman I was speaking to, who became the Minister of Children and Family Development. What I didn't know at the time I first spoke with her, she was a former gender studies professor at the University of Victoria. So when I told this story on Twitter and I tagged her, she responded, proudly stating simply, I stand with the transgender community. And this is going on in several U.S. states.
You know, that's an example out of Canada, but we know that this is happening here in the United States too. Insanity, right? Now, what is it that the communists wanted to do? They wanted to get into our schools, make the abnormal normal, make law and order fascism. This is on Tucker Carlson's podcast. This is Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore has been a liberal. Always, right? He's always been anti-war, anti-big corporations, always been liberal. What woke him up was him personally becoming vaccine injured. Then he started looking into it. He's like, oh my gosh, these people have lied to me. Then he looked into the next thing and the next thing. And now Jimmy Dore could sit in here and we could totally have this podcast. We could have a discussion with Jimmy Dore about tax rates because we can agree not to make the abnormal normal. Does that make sense?
He makes the show look like a news show.
Yes. So Jimmy Dore was talking about the Barack Obama presidency. Now, we've been informed by Emerald Robinson, Patrick Byrne, and others that Barack Obama's first primary election in the Iowa caucuses, that was the first election that the Dominion voting machines manipulated, that they coordinated it out of Venezuela, right? So Venezuela tied in with the Cubans. You see what the Cubans' 5 principles are. And what did Barack Obama do during his presidency?
Obama made sure the bankers got their bonuses while he kicked 5.1 million families out of their homes. Not people, 5.1 million families. And then you find out that he got more money from Wall Street than John McCain did. And you find out that
did he really?
Yes, and that there was an email from Wall Street, from Citigroup to the Barack Obama campaign with a list of people they wanted in his cabinet. Every person on that list ended up in his cabinet. And the reason I know that, because that got released by WikiLeaks, and that's why they've been trying to kill Julian Assange ever since. And so they all are working. He wasn't a departure from George W. Bush, Barack Obama, just his skin color. He took us from 2 wars to 7. He gave us a right-wing healthcare plan, which came out of the Heritage Foundation, which is the same people I gave you Project 2025. And he gave us Mitt Romney's healthcare plan. So and he deported all those. He dropped more bombs than George Bush, and nobody noticed. And that's why they wanted to have Kamala Harris. That was their first choice. The donor class was Kamala Harris. They thought we'd have a female Barack Obama, and that's a good face for imperialism, right? Because we have a black woman bombing and stealing resources and doing neoliberal and neocon policies. That's perfect.
We could definitely shut down anybody who speaks up against her and calls her racist.
Yeah. Perfect.
While
and
we bomb them.
Get a vote. So then they had to go to their second most reliable person, which was Joe Biden. That's exactly how it worked. I don't know if you remember, but they coronated her.
What he's saying is Harris was the heir apparent, but got 1% of the votes in the primary. Just couldn't get off the ground, right? So we ended up with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as VP.
On Martha's Vineyard, she's going to be our candidate. And they thought they had the black Barack Obama, but she couldn't get a vote. She has no political talent, right? And so then they forced her on Joe Biden as the vice president. And then, of course, they did a coup, just like Jim Gaffigan said at the Al Smith dinner. They had the debates way earlier than they normally would, so they would give them enough time to install Kamala Harris, and that's exactly what happened. So I don't know how I got off on this tangent, but yes, we know that after Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party, then the major newspapers, the mentions of racism and white supremacy, people have studied this. I'm not making this up. I'm just quoting studies. It went through the roof. And why is that? That's because, as Chomsky taught us, the newspapers aren't there to inform you. They're to manufacture consent. And one of the great ways to manufacture consent for the establishment is to divide and conquer. It's been there ever since World War II. It's been divide and conquer. And that's exactly what they did. So they got everybody that's what identity politics is. And it's got everybody till you identify with your skin color. It's the opposite of Martin Luther King. It's the opposite of judge someone by the content of their character. And so now everybody's identified with their gender or their sexual preference or their skin color or their ethnicity. And they got us all siloed off and split up.
They got us all siloed off and split off and fighting with each other. This is something I saw in prison. Why is prison still segregated in 2025? Well, it's segregated because when the prison population is divided against itself, you forget to notice that there's one guard for 200 inmates. You know what I mean? It becomes really easy to manage the population when nobody wants to speak up because you don't know who the guards are going to favor preferentially. You see what I'm saying? Like, this extends everywhere. So now we're going to go through and we're just going to play a bunch of clips here about the division in America and where is this coming from? Why am I divided from my neighbor? I mean, I understand debating tax rates, but how does it become so virulent that we turn each other in, that we snitch on each other, that we spy on each other? This feels very Soviet-esque. Watching that documentary yesterday, it was fascinating. The Russians move in, and there was about a couple-year period where they were just an occupying force, and they were kind of going to rebuild Poland and rebuild Hungary and all these places. And then the people had this idea that, we're going to get some help from the Soviets to rebuild, and we'll be thankful for them, but we'll eventually have our own elections and we'll govern ourselves. Wasn't really going to happen, right? What the Soviets came in and did what the only thing they did well was propaganda. Make films of whole communities coming together to clean up the town voluntarily for the good of Poland, right? And then they started printing books in Russian and forcing all the kids to learn Russian in the schools. The only way you could get your kids to school was if you went to one of these Russian schools that was being funded by them, right? Because Poland didn't have any money to put up a school, so you went to a Russian school. So Polish kids are now learning Russian, and they're reading Russian propaganda books that don't teach them science. One of the guys was saying, we got all these Russian books, and we learned Russian. We never learned, how much for a pound of turkey or where's the bathroom, but we learned things like, what's the phrase that's common in Soviet to each according to his needs. You know what I mean? And like, we learned all these political phrases, but we didn't learn any practical things. So it was like this really weird. We had to speak Polish out on the street, but in school we had to speak Russian. And even when they would do like a science class, you could only be taken seriously if your answer was preceded by a quote from Lenin. So you'd be doing a math problem and you'd have to start out your answer with a quote from Lenin and then show the math problem. Okay. So the communists love to take over education because they reject the religious cathedral. They've used education not as a means to advance science and technology. They've used it also as a means to advance the priestcraft, the ideas that they want to span space and time. Capitalists are always bad. Collectivism is always good, that kind of thing. This is a gentleman right here who apparently long before January 6th, he's former military, something to do with intelligence. And he started targeting American militia groups and infiltrating them. And on January 6th, he was watching live feeds of people that he had placed into the crowd.
Time, I published that in 2019. Since then, all of the time, the years that I spent looking outwards at the threats to the United States and to our community, those threats no longer seem nearly as relevant compared to the domestic threats. Leading up to January 6th.
The domestic threats. What are the domestic threats? Other countries don't like the transgender thing, which is why we fund Pakistani studies and female studies and wherever. Why we put funding in for a program to hire female police guards in Afghanistan. You know what I mean?
Because they would never fund such nonsense.
They would never fund such nonsense. But all of a sudden, America's having a second take. Maybe we don't like the DEI. Maybe we don't like this community that you guys are forcing on us. So here's a veteran who's coming back and going, well, that's what we were fighting for. We were fighting for those progressive values, those liberal values, right? Whatever they define it as. I met a former Navy SEAL. It was a client of mine. He and his wife were far left. He was a Navy SEAL. Like, he's like, I've killed people under the ice, in the sky, blah, blah, blah. And he's super left, moved out to Port Angeles, right, to build his little compound out there. And it blew my mind because I was like, of all the people I talked to while I was under indictment and I was working construction for, he was one of a handful where I was like, something's not right. And what it was he wasn't fighting for free speech like you and I think of it. He was fighting for free speech to be transgender, free speech to preach communism, it was a certain direction that he wanted the speech to go. That's how he interpreted it. And he rejected the other side of the speech. This was indoctrination, clearly, between education in school and then his military indoctrination. That's what he was fighting for. This guy strikes me exactly the same. If I ran up to him in any place, I would assume this guy was conservative. Beard, white, clean, no hair, but, clean cut otherwise, right? I would assume that. But that's not always the reality.
I was working for a private firm, collecting intelligence, infiltrating hate groups and unlawful militias, and writing reports, basically intelligence reports for a private company. I don't know where they went. Signed an NDA, so I can't really talk about any of the details, but I can say that my intelligence reports didn't make it to the right people ahead of January 6th. And on that day, on January 6th, my workstation here kind of looks like a space station. I've got screens from here to here, right? I watched the insurrection from the perspective of the insurrectionists. 7 different screens, seven different live feeds, all around the Capitol, in the building. I know the building. I've worked in DC, on and off for years. That's when I decided I need to go my own way, launch my own company. It's called Sparvarius, and I had every intent of just.
I wonder, as he infiltrated these militia groups, if he was spying on other operatives from the government that were super extreme, and his intelligence reports were going nowhere because January 6th needed to happen on their end, right?
Being a consultant and working in security, making sure that my reports make it to the right people to try and save lives and preserve democracy. But every time I talk about what I do, I've had veterans reaching out to me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter saying, hey, how can I get involved? And it took me a couple of years, but I finally came up with the idea of Task Force Butler Institute, which would train veterans not just to perform open source intelligence investigations, but to work as part of a team using a centralized database, which would essentially become an extremism database where we are able to track the real world activities and online activities of everyone from like a General Flynn type figure who's massively influential in QAnon movement to individual veterans who've raided the Capitol as part of the insurrection.
Yeah. So he was spying on people that eventually, he was basically blowing the whistle on January 6th, and then January 6th still happened. So he's upped his game now, right? Targeting people like General Flynn. You know who else targeted General Flynn? James Comey, right? Interesting. What kind of democracy are we saving here? Donald Trump retweeted this weekend from Robert, real_Rob N. This is the United States Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller, and this is his quote. Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Monaco, and Barack Hussein Obama all conspired and worked together to sabotage, undermine, and unravel and overthrow the United States government and the democratic institutions and structures of this country. Do you think the gentleman we just heard from would agree with that statement? Probably not. The Russiagate hoax, the Russiagate conspiracy, and all of the assaults against our liberties, along with it, the pre-dawn raids, the handcuffing of innocent Americans, the espionage against President Trump's campaign and staff, the removal of his national security advisor, General Flynn, one fake indictment, one fake charge after another, the special counsel, all of it was an unrelenting attempt to overthrow the government of the American people voted for. And you've got guys like we just played there that were basically supporting that and in on that, and is a power player. He's doing OSINT. Open source intelligence, gathering information on American citizens that he views as against the people, except are the American people really for transgenderism? Are the American people really for the stuff that they've put out over the last 15 years since Barack Obama? You listen to Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore, I'm sure, voted for Barack Obama, right? George Bush was the devil. Dick Cheney is the emperor off of Star Wars. You know what I mean? And so Jimmy Dore is coming around because he can look at truth, right, and make a decision for himself. But you've got this guy that's like, are you trying to justify your life's existence when you were fighting for transgenderism overseas?
I think part of that is that
can't let your life's work go to waste, right?
Yeah.
So Donald Trump posted this video, and the caption here is, and he's reposted this tweet. So, Attorney General Bondi, you have the evidence from DNI Gabbard regarding the 2020 election. The people demand accountability. Barack Obama should be charged and prosecuted. Trump retweeted this. Mind you, this isn't a request.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified oversight majority staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation.
What does that word irrefutable mean?
Not able to refute.
Not able to refute. Irrefutable, like hard evidence, like
yes,
written pieces of paper with signatures on it, recordings,
photos,
the things that connect the dots. This isn't just a bunch of idiots, a guy over at CISA that just doesn't believe that our systems got hacked. It's not just a random poll worker that's like, did I run that batch of ballots again? Maybe I'll run it through one more time just to be sure. Right? There's a coordinated effort. It's irrefutable, and Barack Obama sat at the top of it.
And
Barack Obama, who, by the way, was installed by the Venezuelans.
Using the Dominion's machines.
You getting the point here? Have I tied some dots together enough?
Community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration.
Irrefutable. This is not a request.
She mentioned that there were standards that were bent. And when she said that, I was like, oh, so they have their own moral code that they can change.
Yes. Catherine Austin Fitts
that's
talks
the problem right there.
Catherine Austin Fitts talks about this with the bankers in the late 90s and early 2000s, where when she said, hey, you're breaking all these laws, and he goes, I don't answer to those. I answer to a higher moral code. What are you talking about? Right? What's this higher moral code? Again, go study Soviet Russia. That's the thing. Well, this is a higher set of values. Whatever your constitution says, this is better. That constitution is based in, at the time it was based in the bourgeois class and protecting them, right? That's kind of was their shtick, was the classism. For us, it's, the constitution's racist, and racism is bad. So our higher moral code is one of equality and diversity and equity and inclusion. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yes. Now, the pendulum will always swing. And when it swings, once you get going, there's a certain, on each side of the metrodome or whatever you call it, there's a certain threshold where the rules have to be broken to put the rules back in place, right? So if you get a politician, if things get too out of balance and the pendulum starts swinging really far, once you cross that threshold, certain things happen. The dictator has to arise. The strong man has to show up. He has to rally the troops. This is called the fourth turning. And whoever's in power during a fourth turning has the ability to do the things necessary to put things back in order. Does that make sense? And it happens on the left and it happens on the right. Wherever you land, when the pendulum gets past the threshold on the swing, you start seeing stuff like this. So history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure as heck rhymes, doesn't it? Right? So let's go look at the American Civil War and Abraham Lincoln, who people in the South call a tyrant. I wonder why. Let's read this. This is from a footnote on a book about the Civil War written by Shelby. Shelby Foote is his name, and he has a footnote in here talking about the Civil War. And it starts out, and with good and relevant cause, for now that the issue was unalterably one of arms. So once Lincoln realized that this can only be resolved at arms, there's no diplomatic solutions here. So think about what just happened with Donald Trump and the Supreme Court. Oh, you can't send the National Guard to defend enforce federal law and defend federal people. You're going to have to use the active duty military. You're going to have to call the Insurrection Act. Once you call the Insurrection Act, the executive branch is totally unaccountable. Totally unaccountable, because that's the point. There's an insurrection, right? You have to protect the government by doing anything necessary to protect this, right? So he goes, it was unalterably one of arms. Lincoln took unto himself powers far beyond any ever claimed by a chief executive. In late April, for security reasons, he authorized simultaneous raids on every telegraph office in the northern states, seizing the originals and copies of all telegrams sent or received during the past year. So that's like early NSA. Okay? As a result of this and other measures, sometimes on a no stronger evidence than the suspicions of an informer nursing a grudge. So just an informant, like the guy we just played, that's doing open source intelligence stuff on people that he doesn't like the cut of their jib and the way they go about, doing their thing. Were taken from their homes in the dead of night, thrown into dungeons, and held without explanation or communication with the outside world. I have a few friends that went through J6 like this: solitary confinement for months, limited phone calls, no mail in or out, no toenail clippers, no haircuts. Yeah. I know a few friends who went through this in the 2020s. Writs of habeas corpus were denied. I have a friend who a judge admitted that habeas corpus wasn't done. He was being held in Virginia on a state holiday and had court in DC, and the state wouldn't transport him. So he missed a hearing, and they filed a habeas corpus motion because they couldn't produce the body. Pretty rare in our system today, unless you're dealing with J6, in which case they just screw you left and right. right, were denied, including those issued by the Supreme Court of the United States. By the same authority, or absence of it, he took millions from the Treasury and handed them to private individuals, instructing them to act as purchasing agents for procuring the implements of war at home and abroad. When the pendulum gets to a certain point, you have to use the tools you have in order to preserve whatever Lincoln was trying to preserve, the Union. Donald Trump gets into office, and what's one of the first tweets he puts out? He who saves the country breaks no laws. This is what he's referring to. This is where we are headed. So peasants, wake up. The only way to stop this is to change the zeitgeist, get enough people to see the right thing so we can fix it democratically through our representative government, right? We have to give them more support than and the idea that we, will take back control by any means necessary as a people, then the NSA is putting pressure on them, or whoever's using NSA information to blackmail them. It's the only way. You have to speak up loud, right? Because they want to do it in increments. If they do it in big bites like they did in COVID, you wake up Jimmy Dore.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's the problem. So we are fast approaching a point where it's going to get worse. And here's the thing. Right now, Donald Trump is in power, right? And I showed you the comment that I got from another J6er where the FBI reached out to him and said, now we're going after left-wing extremists. Okay, great. Right? I mean, again, these tools are kind of bad. Now we're going to dive in a little bit about what kind of information is available for you out here that anybody can go get, and what kind of stuff that they can create on you, and what kind of story they can tell about your life without any of your own input. So this is that same guy again. Fast forward here. Now he's got his little organization set up and his team of snitches, and how they're right now actively creating lists of people that are supporting Donald Trump and supporting the cause. And if they ever get back in power, if the pendulum doesn't swing far enough that Trump can do what he has to do to put the insurrection down, it's going to come back, and you're going to end up with someone over here on the left that has all those same tools, and the pendulum's going to be past that threshold point.
Forrest Butler Institute, we are a teeny tiny organization. As of this month, we now have 2 staff. Despite the fact that we've been a teeny tiny little organization, we've been punching way above our weight class, right? We have helped to facilitate 5 federal lawsuits against hate groups. That includes lawfare, there are also state level lawsuits, attorneys general from New Hampshire, which is a Republican, and Massachusetts, which is a Democrat, filing suits against NSC 131, which has really just messed up their membership and put a real cost on being a neo-Nazi. But we've been small, we've been underfunded, we've had virtually no staff, and working with a bunch of volunteers. That is changing now. With our partnership with Common Defense, we are going to be drastically expanding our operations. We already operate nationwide in terms of intelligence gathering, but over the next year, we're going to be hiring staff around the country to do in-person ops. And Common Defense is the nation's largest grassroots veterans organization. They have professional organizers in some of the swing states, and we'll be expanding into California. We're going to be pairing an investigator from Task Force Butler with Common Defense's on the ground grassroots activists, so that we can do threat intelligence. We can do
threat to who?
What are you talking about?
Who? Okay, threat to who?
Yeah.
January 6th was a coup performed by Democrats to take over the American presidency. Okay. But you were assessing threats to who? Who? The regime, not the American people, not the election systems that they're. Look, I don't care who wins as long as we can see the ballots actually showed up that way.
Right.
Right. So you're assessing threats against who? The cathedral, Harvard, Yale, progressivism, transgenderism. Who? What threat are you talking about?
Research and investigations into local hate group activity, and then Common Defense, with its much
define hate
greater membership, can focus on the accountability side. So we gather the evidence and perform the analysis, and Common Defense takes what we've found and demands change from law enforcement, from lawmakers, and from executives around the country.
How can people help? And I know you're going to going to ask people to donate. Well,
This is crazy to me. Look, he's got an American flag in the background. Now, I got to be honest. I struggle with this so much. There's a reason why there's not an American flag behind here. Right? There's a reason why. Because it was that American flag that put me in jail. The people wearing that flag on their arms came to me, locked me up, took me away from my family, right? And because I was trying to defend the Republic, our elections. So whoever's hoisting that flag during the Biden administration definitely wasn't aligned with me. I was put in prison with guards that didn't even know if the flag was right side up or not. So these guys act like, hey, I got the flag in the background. I'm a veteran. What were you fighting for? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. These guys are talking about a democracy, mob rule. So it's just 50 plus 1. That's who gets to hoist the flag. Is that where we're at? Or is it the dictatorship of the minority where you just control all the Soviet Union stuff? Oh, yeah, 90% turnout on the vote. Most votes ever, Joe Biden. Doesn't really matter what the count was. It's just you got the most votes ever. You see what I'm saying? The least amount of counties ever won by a president. Somehow. So that's why, I don't know. What's faux patriot? One man's revolutionary is another man's terrorist. Right? Based on what these guys are talking about, kind of label them terrorists. They're sure instilling a lot of fear in the American population that thinks that they're going to church might be considered a hate act. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you're Christian. That must mean you hate Islam. That must mean you hate transgenders. Well, not necessarily. But I'd like my kids to respect private property and do unto others that they, that's kind of why I go to church. I wasn't really thinking about persecution necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's a struggle, man. It's a struggle. It doesn't mean I don't love the flag and everything it stands for, but it's hard because I have to question who's hoisting that flag.
Sure to put a link in the show notes, but you need volunteers as well. And I want you to be realistic in expectation setting, because the last time we had you on, we had a flood of inquiries. You're still building up. What are you looking for? What can people expect if they reach out to you?
Yeah, so if people go to taskforcebutler.org and they click the sign up sheet, they'll get in the pipeline. But part of the reason that we're partnering with Common Defense is we simply cannot expand our intelligence team to everyone who wants to join. It takes professional full-time staff to manage, 20 volunteers. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people try to fill out applications. What we want to make sure that people do is they get active with work that can be done now with Common Defense. That could be doing things like out in the street, going and protesting. We expect, Donald Trump is going to try to use the military to perform ethnic cleansing, right? That's, let's call it what it is. He's going to perform ethnic cleansing, trying to use the military. So we'll be doing street actions, like Common Defense will be doing street actions. But there's all
wrap yourself in that flag and go fight the guys who carry the flag on their shoulders.
What is he talking about?
Exactly.
Also stuff for people who are not interested in that kind of stuff. They will train folks how to write letters to the editor, how to perform a press conference, how to engage with the media, and how to engage with our elected officials and encourage them, advocate, so that they do things to protect our local communities while we're dealing with an out of control federal government.
What are we talking about here?
I would say skip all that. Use your third grade education to write your own letter. Just do it. You don't need coaching.
Here's the thing. We're fast approaching an era where people like that who want to make lists of people, right, who are insurrectionists, genocidal, warmongers who just want law and order. Donald Trump said that once. On our end, the extremists are just ones that want law and order. On your end, the extremists are the ones that flip everything on their head, like putting men and women's next to kids. You know what I mean? The flock camera system. Government cameras, right? Did you know that I could just pull up any traffic camera I wanted anywhere in the United States that's connected to this system?
No.
Yeah, these people that are digging into this and spending all their time on OSINT, they don't even have to follow you around. They can just track you on the cameras.
A few weeks ago, using a commercial search engine,
I very easily found the administration interfaces for dozens of flock safety cameras. I shared this information with 404 Media, and with John Gaines' help, that number quickly grew to nearly 70. None of the data or video footage was encrypted. There was no username or password required. These were all completely public-facing for the world to see, and some of them still are. You don't have to be an expert to find and gain access to this. You don't even have to type anything in to see every single person, vehicle, and activity that took place in these locations in the last 31 days. Whether you wanted to watch this footage live in real time or look at footage from a month ago, you could just point and click your way to it like you were watching Netflix. You could even open up the live streams in VLC or cast it to a television. Making any modification to the cameras is illegal, so I didn't do this, but I had the ability to delete any of the video footage or evidence by simply pressing a button. I could see the paths where all of the evidence files were located on the file system, and I could see their hashes and signatures. Some of the devices we saw were the familiar-looking Falcon cameras that you see all over the country, but the majority of these were Flock's new Condor cameras, which are designed to detect and track people. They're PTZ cameras, meaning pan, tilt, zoom, and they quite literally use AI to zoom in and follow you around whether you're a person of interest or not. In just the time that it took to count and verify these vulnerabilities, I saw a family in North Carolina load their infant and a bunch of merchandise in a Lowe's parking lot, and I suppose one could cross-reference their license plate with the Park Mobile data breach and find out exactly where the garage is that will store these new fancy tools. I watched a man leave his house in the morning in New York. I watched a woman jogging alone on a forest trail in Georgia. This trail had multiple cameras, and I could watch a man rollerblade and then take a break to watch rollerblading videos on his phone. How? Because the camera's AI automatically zoomed in on it. Just like
camera's AI automatically zoomed in on it. So you get on someone's list, and all of a sudden, somebody sitting at a computer somewhere can just track all your movements.
Wow.
Camera footage. Oh, look, you're near somebody, right? Oh, that's your license plate.
Just like person of interest.
Just like
zoomed in on a couple arguing at a street market in Atlanta. So what? They're still anonymous, right? No, they're not. Within 2 minutes of open source intelligence using a commercial facial recognition engine, I found out that one of them just finished medical school and the other is dealing with chronic irritable bowel syndrome. The couple also just had a baby last year and they have a pretty concerning debt to income ratio. I also know that they drove over 45 minutes from their address in the suburbs to attend church in Atlanta that morning, and then they checked out this market and bought a sweater. I watched a
hate group, and the sweater said, "Let's go, Brandon. Put him on the list."
Law enforcement officer and ambulance escort a man having a mental health crisis in Iowa. I know this because the Cedar Rapids Police Department maintains a public database of every single emergency call in the city, as well as daily arrest reports with individuals' names, addresses, ages, and genders. Listen, I know that I'm being creepy right now. Just saying these words out loud nauseates me, but I'm trying to show you just a fraction of the information that anyone in the world with access to a commercial search engine has had regarding anyone who attended this market or walked on this trail in the last 31 days. And it gets worse. Here's an exposed flock safety camera permanently pointed at a playground near the Bay Area in California, openly and publicly broadcasting both live and archived video footage of young children playing unattended. Again, just saying this stuff out loud feels so incredibly wrong. But for me personally, the most impactful moment while validating these vulnerabilities was this.
And this right here is what the communists took away from their population. This right here. They created a snitch state, a state where everybody was against you and it was your neighbors, right? And it was maybe an occasional party member or something like that, but it was all this way. You fast forward in Romania, and as they built apartment buildings, the dictator of Romania had hidden cameras in every apartment building, and he would live stream your bedroom at night into his, he had CCTV. It was perverse, okay?
Oh, gosh.
This can get pretty bad, but this is what they were trying to take away. This is the freedom, the individual liberty that we cherish so much. This is what we fight for, and this is what they're taking away.
This resonated with me so much that I actually had tears welling up in my eyes. I've done this exact same thing so many times. I've seen a swing set in an empty park, looked around to make sure nobody was watching, and then just enjoyed the mindless motion that connected me to a simpler time. But this isn't something that most grown men want to be seen doing. The experience requires one to have a moment that is devoid of judgment. It's healthy escapism at its finest. And I realized that it's likely that this man didn't know that he was being recorded, and he probably wouldn't have done this if he had. This is a classic example of the Hawthorne effect, which is a change in an individual's behavior or choices when they know that they're being observed. Surveillance manufacturers love to talk about this effect when it deters crime. After all, someone isn't...
Now, in the cathedral churches, we say God and the angels are watching you. And so, careful what you do, even in private, because in heaven, it'll be played back and you'll be judged. Okay?
Yeah, Santa's making a list.
Santa's making a list. Yes, we teach children this, to just be aware. there's karma. Like, this, every truth gets revealed. Well, what if the power of the state could do that revealing?
Dad's likely to break into a car that's parked near a camera. But what they don't talk about is how it deters escapism. People are less likely to sing or dance or practice an accent or a cartwheel when they know that they're being watched. But escapism is often required for a lot of things. For example, when you learn an instrument or practice a skill for the first time, or even practicing line delivery for a YouTube video. The footage of the man swinging was powerful to me because it made me realize exactly why I have such a visceral objection to mass surveillance. It imposes on our right to find our own identities without judgment. And as someone whose identity and success is owed to ample amounts of escapism, this is a hill that I am willing to die on.
It's pretty fast.
I don't have the luxury to dedicate even more months to yet another flock safety vulnerability, but as you can see, this one is urgent. And frankly, I'm worried that it's already being exploited at the cost of the individuals who are unaware that there are even cameras in these locations. So I got in touch with 404 Media, who has been...
It blew me away when I got my discovery how much stuff was in there. Blew me away. Blew me away how much stuff they could just produce like that. Right. And it's the state has this power, but more and more through vulnerabilities, hacks, leaks of your emails, and the way the commercial data is packaged up and sold. If you have a device ID or an IP address, boom, I can find out pretty much everything about you, come up with a profile. I know more stuff about you than you probably know about yourself.
Probably.
Right. This is happening too at a law enforcement level. You get pulled over and those cops go back to their computer and run your ID.
How many people have seen a police program that's being used called Palantir? It is in your police officer's car on your police officer's computer. So while you've got the person pulled over, you can start to drill down on this person. It's not just like a DMV photo and an NCIC anymore. You can see all their bank accounts, the balance in their bank accounts, the last times they declared cash somewhere. You can see every time they hit a flock camera anywhere in the country. Flock is a giant national traffic monitoring system that is basically everywhere now. And they're taking photographs at every intersection all day. And it's using AI to read license plates and put identities of people places. And it's just keeping all that data, all of it. That's what they've got in their car right now. And we're not getting that in discovery. We're not able to confront it. And we're not able to use it as Brady evidence. We've got Fourth Amendment issues galore, obviously. I didn't realize how prevalent it was. There has never been a surveillance program in the history of the United States that was not used brutally and in a corrupt fashion. And now we have the biggest surveillance system that we've ever had.
Never has one used that wasn't used brutally in a corrupt fashion. So imagine that guy who's doing open source research, right, has his team that are former military vets that get jobs in law enforcement. And now when they pull you over and they look and they go, oh, this guy buys Let's Go Brandon t-shirts. And oh, this guy does this. Oh, he's definitely getting a traffic ticket. He's definitely going to get his car searched. He's definitely, see what I'm saying?
He's definitely going to get some process.
When the pendulum swings to a certain point, whoever's in power has the power to do exactly what Lincoln did. Take the power. This is all I want people to understand. We live in a safety bubble, but you pop that bubble and all of a sudden those authority figures become the biggest brutes, and they do it. Why? I don't know. A paycheck, an ideology, they're being blackmailed. I don't know why. I'm going to show this little video here. And for those of you that are a little squeamish, this is a brutality video. And it's sensitive to me because I saw this happen. Not this exact incident, but I saw an incident, a couple of them actually, very similar to this, right? This is an inmate who needed to be handcuffed while he was in prison to be transported or whatever, didn't want to get handcuffed, didn't want to leave his cell. And this officer, thank goodness, has been arrested and charged. But this kind of stuff happens daily inside of our prisons. This guy's already handcuffed.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting. No, stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. I'm talking to fucking drugs. Hey, look, we're already doing something. Hey, turn around, cuff up, bro. Cuff up. Look. I was good to my side. Yeah. That's what I was good to. Get your side. Now y'all cornering me. It's making me like a party, bro. Yeah. Real, bro. Okay.
Those are your cells, man. 2 people in a cell. It's hard to watch, man. And this is where a white inmate gets involved. Should not happen. Notice the tattoos. And notice the color of these guards. There's something to this, unfortunately. Anyways, it goes on. The pendulum will swing. Soviets, Russians, America, they've all done this. When the division gets big enough and the government decides it's got to put it down, whatever side you're on, when that pendulum hits that mark, if you're on the other side of that pendulum, a mere suspicion could land you in a situation like that. January 6th, there are January 6 inmates that went through, 4-point harness abuse. It's rough. That's why it's hard when I see those guys talking about looking us up and hunting us down with American flag behind them, because I'm like, it's hard. It's really hard, right? This stuff hits the road too, right? So this is the lieutenant governor in Minnesota, and we know how brutal Islam can be. We know how brutal it can be. This is the lieutenant governor, presumably a Christian, okay? Listen to what she's got to say.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Peggy Flanagan. I am the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, and I'm really honored and humbled to be here with all of you today. I am incredibly clear that the Somali community is part of the fabric of the state of Minnesota. I think about my friendship with Nimco. We've been friends for almost 25 years. And when I think of being part of Minnesota and growing up here, the Somali community has always been a part of my Minnesota. So I want to just encourage the community to know that we're with you. We've got your back. I am here shopping today, and just encourage other folks to show up, support our Somali businesses, support our immigrant neighbors. And I know that things are scary right now. And just know that there are more people who are looking out for you. There are more people who are here to support you than you know. I will continue to stand with the Somali community to be with you and to do all I can to return the friendship and community that the Somali community has shown me. Thank you so much.
Yep. And the votes, of course, probably the campaign donations. Now, we've covered this Somali thing quite a bit, and it's an archetype of illegal immigration in general. When your first step into this country is to break the law, it's not that big a deal to lie on an application, on a form, get a loan that you don't deserve, do some EBT SNAP fraud, because in their minds, well, if you're letting me do it and you're not stopping me, and you got all these surveillance cameras and you're not stopping me, then clearly you're in on it. Abby Phillips said something kind of like this, like, well, if they're deporting all these people, they can't all be criminals.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. 7 million means that they're not just going after criminals.
Well, they're going after people who are in the country illegally, right?
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying the criminals, this is a much bigger universe.
Doesn't that make you a criminal?
No, it doesn't.
To come across the border illegally?
Coming into the country illegally is a civil offense. It's not a criminal offense.
Okay, if you come into the country illegally, here's the message. We're going to find you and send you back. I mean, I'm sorry, that's the way it is. And I think the government should pull all the levers at its disposal to find people and pull this off. It's what the American people asked Donald Trump to do. Yes, they should be deporting violent people. Yes, they should be deporting people who committed violent acts before they came here. But at some juncture, if you're going to allow any illegal immigration at all, the message then goes out. Just get here. It'll probably work out for you. That was the last administration.
And why? Because you've got people in their cathedral, the university school system, telling you that that's what you have to do. It gets pretty extreme here. This is, again, in Minnesota.
So in St. Paul, for those of you who live in St. Paul, we have what we call our New American Loan Fund that allows people to take a zero-interest loan to help pay for the price of the citizenship process.
I'm leaving the U.S. and coming back without papers. 0% interest loan.
Wow.
Criminal to get here. We'll give you a loan to pay for your immigration papers, even though you're illegally here.
In St. Paul, we have an immigration services attorney to help us defend people who find themselves being targeted unfairly by the federal administration. That started under the Trump administration.
When you make law and order become fascist, right? Isn't that one of the points that they said these are the 5 principles that we're infiltrating and destroying you guys with? And just these 5 things alone, you'll eat yourselves alive.
We're doing administration because we know that our Somali community are not visitors here. Our Somali community aren't imposers here. Our Somali community is authors of who we are as a city. You are our entrepreneurs. You are our teachers. You are
75% committing fraud. You're our entrepreneurs. We love it.
Business leader.
Meanwhile, American entrepreneurs who actually fill out the forms correctly get their applications rejected.
You are our political leaders. You are the face and the future of our state. So we know your contributions, and I appreciate that you know yours as well. I appreciate the loud noise that you're making in this rotunda today, and I count on you that that loud noise won't stop here. It won't stop in this rotunda. It won't stop when this rally closes. Thank you so much for speaking up. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for building Minnesota the way that you do.
Okay.
All right.
Minnesota, that half of its state budget goes out the door in fraud. Scott Jennings says it's not that hard being on the CNN roundtable because, you know, when you have to do stuff like that, you just repeat it back.
Advent of the debating show, the 10 o'clock show, happened in August between the conventions, and throwing me in the middle of this arena every night was a real chance to show what I can do. I'm not sure I've really thought about it all that much, Alex, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I finally found my calling, and that is to be a pilgrim in an unholy land. And that is wow. That is kind of what the table is. And, you know, most of the time, you know, we're debating the most important topics. Occasionally we don't pick the right things, but most of the time we do. But like you, I like to ask questions. And also I listen. I think some people in debates, they just don't listen. They come out, they've got their pre-programmed thing, but they don't really listen to the conversation that's unpacking. And I try to listen very carefully because almost always someone will say something so asinine that if they heard it repeated back to themselves, it would completely dismantle their entire appearance. And it happens more often than not. Advent of the debate.
It's called the Socratic method, where you just ask questions until you can't ask questions anymore. The people coming out of the university system don't ask questions. They've been told, and they regurgitate and repeat. And they've come prepared for the debate with their talking points and things like the policy debate we saw the other day. The niggas are president. Like, oh, okay. Well, he won because he said the N-word, so he can't, you know, that trumps every other argument. You're a fascist. Oh, okay. So so the tax rate going down, that's fascism. How dare you not pay for Somali immigration? You know what I mean? It gets to the point where as the pendulum swings, we're going to get a little bit of this. This is a comedy prank. This is comedy, by the way. This is George Costanza and Jerry Seinfeld on the way to, I don't know if you remember this episode, they hijacked the limo, right? To go to the Knicks game, or to go to the Garden, and it turns out they weren't going to a Knicks game. They were going to a white supremacist rally.
And the Jews steal money through the Zionist-occupied government and use the black man to bring drugs into our oppressed white minority communities.
You're not going to open with that, are you?
But yet, because of indoctrination, people are actually opening with that. So this is they had this little debate. This is the DAF show. And the question being debated between, I guess they're calling them like left or whatever, and MAGA, is white privilege is a real thing.
To diversity.
I don't want to be like replaced at a job because I'm
white.
You
are not being replaced.
I literally just said I've not gotten jobs.
So have I, but I don't feel like I'm being replaced.
That's what that is. You could have got that job if you were black. So how is that not being replaced? That's what affirmative action is. What do you think it is?
No, that was casting. That's what that was. It was casting. But why is it hard for you not to just go, I did not get that one, let me go for this one?
Yeah, I will do that. But you think like black people would be chill with that if it's like, oh, sorry, you're black,
you can't get chill with that.
I don't think so. We had a whole civil rights movement, so I don't think that was very chill.
You got a problem with the civil rights movement?
Because they were being discriminated against, so they started.
You think they should still be slaves?
What? I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they weren't chill with being discriminated
against. You think that we should still have them at the back of the bus? Like, these things happen so that we could.
You see in the crosstalk here, Well, why do you think that? Well, because I grew up they were being discriminated against, and now we don't discriminate against anybody. That was the result, right? Like, we all good?
Right.
Well, but we're not done. We're not done.
To have equality. Why is equality difficult?
How is it equality for me to not get a job because I'm white?
Why is it a problem to just work harder?
I mean, how would you feel if white people said that to black people pre-civil rights?
I feel like you probably say that to black people post-civil rights.
What? Meanwhile, you've got Ketanji Brown Jackson, a Supreme Court Associate Justice, who, makes an interesting comment about It's a Wonderful Life.
Public business. I'm a photographer. My belief is that, I'm doing It's a Wonderful Life scenes. That's what I'm offering. Okay. I want to do video depictions of It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm knowing that movie very well. I want to be authentic. And so only white children and families can be customers for that particular product. Everybody else I'll give to everybody else. I'll sell them anything they want, just not the It's a Wonderful Life depictions. I'm expressing something, right? For your purposes, that's speech. What about, what's the other step? It's speech, and I can say anti-discrimination laws can't make me sell the It's a Wonderful Life package to non-white individuals.
It's a hard logic to follow, isn't it there? Now, she's proposing that because of the anti-discrimination laws that I can make a film with only white kids, but I can also only sell it to people who are white, right? This kind of goes with the whole baker baking the cake. His problem wasn't that he wouldn't bake a cake for the gay couple. It was that he wasn't going to use his artistic skills to make two gay people on top of the cake, right? But he'd sell them a cake. He just wouldn't make it to their description because that required his art and his expression and his speech. Okay, so she's taking this argument a step further. Well, you would limit sales. Well, if you're limiting sales, could you do redlining? Do you see what I'm saying? All of a sudden you're doing redlining in order to stop communities from being non-segregated. You see what I'm saying? It's like they've come full circle on their argument. I've said this before. The Democrats never actually left the plantation mentality, and they own the plantation. Okay? So they're just trying to create more and more division and more deals like what Jimmy Dore mentioned with Barack Obama. By the end of Barack Obama's term, we're all identifying by race and sexuality, and that creates divisions. And it does bring some of these things right to the surface. Now, when it comes to immigration, Project Veritas got this undercover video from this is a State Department workers, actually a series of State Department workers. And I'll just read some of these quotes. Oh yeah, so all the good, honest, hardworking Mexicans stay in Mexico, and all the pieces of garbage come to the United States. And the Mexican government has no reason to stop it because their garbage goes to another country and sends money back to them. When asked about the ultimate goal behind such politics, Daniel responded, they want to change the demographics of the United States. What's happening in Somalia? Oh, I mean, Minnesota, sorry. Is this not exactly the lived experience we're having? Traditional standard Americans are not leftists. Latin Americans are all leftists. It literally is. It literally is essential to try to change the demographics in the United States. A coordinated effort to try to change the demographics. Here, this same debate that they had, the question was illegal immigration. On the left, you've got non-MAGA, and on the right, you have MAGA.
Lost a House seat because the number of bodies, not citizens, bodies in California went down.
The current ICE raids violate American values and constitutional rights.
The border should be strengthened. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what do you do with the people that are here that aren't criminals?
Just want to take a bird's eye view of all of this. It has to do with the number of representatives in the House that are allotted to each state. Why did Nancy Pelosi want to give free houses to undocumented immigrants? Why? Because of apportionment. California had the most U-Haul rentals of people leaving California. So in order to counteract that and get their House seat back, they're incentivizing illegal immigration. Please try to take the emotion out of it for 1 millisecond. I know that it's hard, but it really has to do with the number of bodies, the number of House seats, and power. Because I guarantee you, if apportionment went back to just counting U.S. citizens, the Democrats wouldn't give two shits about illegal immigrants. And I want to say one more thing too. My family, I was born in New York, like in 1979, and we went back to Iran and the revolution started, and they wouldn't let Jews leave. My father was threatened with his life. He said he was going on a medical conference, flew to Vienna, left the passports of me, my sister, and my mother in the government's hands so that they knew we weren't escaping. My mother hired smugglers. We went to the bazaar one day. They put us in the back of a covered truck. We were in fetal position with strangers. Burlap sacks and corn were put on top of us, and we were taken to the border of Pakistan, where we got into a pickup truck. That night in the desert, border police caught us and started shooting at us. We lived in Pakistan for 3 months waiting for visas to reunite with my father. We stayed in Vienna for 3 more months to get legal documents to come to this amazing country legally. It's the right way to do it. We can't not know who is here. They just found a Hamas, somebody who participated in the October 7th attacks. They caught him here in the U.S. Why? Because when Biden administration let all these people in without checking who they are, they let in a Hamas terrorist who participated in October 7th.
Making the abnormal normal, make law and order seem like fascism. Open your doors, open your doors. Oh, Minnesota's now a Somali state. We're changing our flag. Oh, hey, Maine, we've got fraud coming out the wazoo. We've got like half the budget of California is going out the door in corruption.
We're going to need some of those Canadian states to make up for the ones we're losing here.
Meanwhile, we pay, and the Supreme Court just took away from Donald Trump the ability to enforce the laws of the land using ordinary forces, things like the National Guard to backstop ICE and immigration and FBI and DEA and all these agencies that are trying to right the ship under Donald Trump's direction, which is temporary, by the way, unless J.D. Vance or someone else takes up the reins and continues the work. If the pendulum switches, they're going to come back as hard as possible. They're going to replace all the people that were deported. They're going to throw people that speak up against it in prison and persecute them and track you on the flock cameras, close down your bank accounts. Been there, done that.
The show might be over.
or broadcast from a deep underground bunker with Starlink, which is placed very far away from the bunker. Justice Alito warns us about this in his dissent on this week's decision.
Whatever one may think about the current administration's enforcement of the immigration laws or the way ICE has conducted its operations, the protection of federal officers from potentially lethal attacks should not be thwarted.
Because if you allow it to be thwarted, guys like that guy who's infiltrating hate groups, if he finds some sheriff department that stands up against girls in the boys or boys in the girls' locker room, they're going to say his sheriff's department's a hate group. They'll infiltrate it. You know what I mean? If you cannot stand up and protect law officials, first responders, you've painted Donald Trump into a corner where he has to declare insurrection. And once you do that, you've really tilted the scales. George Washington faced a similar challenge. At a certain point, he had to throw out all the gentleman rules away. He had to throw away the British common law system, right? And he had to cross the Delaware on Christmas Eve, right? Donald Trump faces a similar situation that Lincoln faced, where at some point you have to go. This only gets settled at arms when just this week we had another ICE officer that was ran over by a car, just another U.S. citizen that wants to stop all the hate in his community, right? At a certain point, when you realize this only gets resolved by force, where you have to put down an insurrection, things are going to get tough.
Washington was very prudent and he knew about risk mitigation. But sometimes you get backed into a corner and you got to roll the iron dice of war. That's what happened on Christmas night. Washington.
We have a great country. We have a great system. There's checks and balances. There's due process. And I believe that we can settle things in normal order, right? One of the things that I am very cognizant of, while I've mentioned the flag, that flag also set me free. Because when someone else was hoisting the flag over the White House, they saw January 6th for what it was and let me out. That flag is our symbol of our republic. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have to wrap ourselves in that, understand it clearly what that means, and take it to the end, man. It's a pledge. All right, that's it for our public side. We are going to jump over to private, and take a look at a couple things. We're going to be talking a little bit about Canada. We're going to be talking a little bit about that, what I mentioned in Maryland, the ICE officer that was run, or the attack on the ICE officers. And we're also going to be talking about a bust that just happened in the medical field. So we'll see you guys over there, and we'll talk to the rest of you guys on Monday. Bye.